In the name of Allah, the most merciful and the most gracious. Students, we are doing chapter number 16, Support and Movement. I am your course instructor Adiba Muzammil, and the topic for today is divisions of human skeleton. So as you all know, the human skeleton is made up of different types of bones which collectively sum up, and the total comes to be 206. All these bones are present in different regions, forming the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton. The parts of the axial skeleton are skull, vertebral column and the rib cage. And the parts of the appendicular skeleton are pectoral girdle and pelvic girdle, which are also known as the forelimbs and the hind limbs. Now this is the organization of the skeleton, and you can see it very clearly that the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton are shown with two different colors. The axial skeleton here is shown with blue colored bones, which will comprise the head, the rib cage and the vertebral column. The appendicular skeleton, on the other hand, which will comprise the pectoral girdle and the pelvic girdle, and which are also known as the bones of arms and the legs, which are shown here by the purple color. So now the difference between the axial and appendicular skeleton is very much clear after seeing this picture. Now if we talk about the skull bones, which are the part of the axial skeleton, there are basically 29 bones which will form 4 different divisions of the skull. Number 1, cranial bones. Number 2, the facial bones. Number 3, ear ossicles. And number 4, the hyoid bone. We will talk about them one by one. Now coming towards the first part, that is the cranium. There are 2 paired bones and 4 unpaired bones, and the total comes to be 8 bones in the cranium. First of all, the parietal bone, which is a paired bone of the skull or cranium, it is located on each side of the skull. You can see the parietal bones are shown with the blue part in the diagram. Then comes the temporal bones. These bones are present at the sides of the head, which are known as the temples. Now coming towards the unpaired bones, the sphenoid bone. It is present in the middle of the skull towards the front of the brain, which is shown here with the pink color. Occipital bone, which is present or which houses the back of the brain and is shown here with the green color. The frontal bone, making up the bony part of the forehead. And finally the ethmoid bone, which separates the nasal cavity from the brain. So all these bones are very clear in this picture because of the color differentiation in the diagram. Now coming towards the facial bones, which are of great importance, there are total 14 facial bones, out of which 2 are unpaired and the rest 6 are paired bones. The paired bones are maxilla, zygomatic, nasal, lacrimal, inferior concha and palatine, whereas the unpaired bones are mandible and vomer. Now the first one, that is called maxilla, it forms the upper jaw and it is shown in the diagram as well. Then is the zygomatic bone, which basically forms the prominence of the cheek. So if you see a frontal look of the face, you will come to know the zygomatic bones will forms the cheek bones. Then comes the nasal bones. There are two small oblong bones which will be present in the nose. Fourth one is called lacrimal bone. This bone is small in its size and it forms the part of the eye sockets. Then comes inferior concha. These are the pair of the facial bones. Lastly, the palatine, which is present actually between maxilla and sphenoid. Mandible and vomer. Mandible is present to the lower cheek, to the lower side of the cheek and near the last part of the ear, and vomer is another bone which is present in the facial part. Third one is the ear ossicles, in which three bones are present and all three are paired bones. No unpaired bone is present in ear ossicles. And fourth one is hyoid bone, which is very important. It is only one single bone which is unpaired and it lies at the base of the skull below the tongue. So its function is basically to support the tongue. Now I'm going to show you the diagrams of ear ossicles and the hyoid bone. These are the auditory ossicles and the three bones which are malleus, stapes and incus. Their structures are shown here. They are fused together. You can see them individually, but no need to go in more details. You just have to memorize the name of the malleus, stapes and incus and their functions. Then comes the hyoid bone. It is easily visible in the diagram, which is present in the neck region at the base of the tongue and it supports the tongue. It is present at the top of the thyroid region. Second is the vertebral column. It extends from the skull to the pelvis, which is also known as the backbone, and it helps to protect and maintains an upright position of the person or any organism which is called a vertebrate. Normally the vertebral column has four curvatures, means the vertebral columns and its vertebrae are divided up into four curvatures and there are 33 bones in total. First part is called the cervical part. Second is called the thoracic part. Third is called the lumbar part. Fifth and sixth, fourth and fifth are called the sacrum and coccyx. The number of bones in each region according to their location is given. The cervical region contains 7 vertebrae. The thoracic part or the chest cavity contains 12 vertebrae. The lumbar region contains 5 vertebrae. Sacrum, which are the fused bones, contains 5 bones. And coccyx, which is also fused, contains 4 bones. The 7 vertebrae in the neck region or in the cervical vertebra, out of which 2 are most important. First one is called atlas and the second is called axis. The thoracic vertebrae, which is made up of 12 bones, and it covers the thorax or the chest cavity, having a large spinous processes, on the basis of which it is given the name of spinal cord. Then comes the lumbar vertebrae, which is present at the waist region. It is comprised of 5 bones. The pelvic vertebrae, which are present at the pelvic region, and it contains 2 sets, the sacrum and coccyx, which are the fused bones or called the tail bones. The sacrum or the sacral vertebrae is formed by the fusion of anterior 5 vertebrae, and the sacrum articulates with the iliac bones of the hip bone to form the back of the pelvis. Coccyx is formed by the fusion of 4 posterior bones. Now the rib cage. The rib cage contains 12 pairs of the ribs, which articulates and which connects with the thoracic vertebrae. There are 10 pairs which connect anteriorly with the sternum, either directly, that is true ribs, or indirectly, that is false ribs. So basically there are about 3 different sets of the bones in the rib cage. 1 to 7 of the ribs are known as true ribs that attach directly to the sternum. 8th and 9th and 10th are called the false ribs because they are not attached with the sternum, but they are attached to the sternum by means of costal cartilage. So they are called the false ribs because they are not attached with the bones, but they are attached by the cartilage. 11th and 12th pairs of the ribs are known as the floating ribs because they do not attach to the sternum and they are floating at the base of the rib cage. This was all about the axial skeleton. In the next lecture we will begin up with the appendicular skeleton. Thank you so much.